Hello and welcome to The World This Week, the podcast in which we explore all the things happening around the world in the next few days that can inspire and motivate and enthuse you and your children on your learning journeys together. This week, the 20th of January 2025, we've got some amazing things happening that can really motivate you and your child. So we'll dive right in. January the 20th. It's Penguin Awareness Day. Are you aware of penguins? I'm sure you are. Are you aware that their numbers are declining globally? That's not so great. But it's a good opportunity for you and your child to talk about conservation, how we can look after the habitats of penguins and other animals, right? What impact humans have and the things that we can do as individuals, but also the things that we could try and promote amongst humanity to save penguins' habitats and other animals that might be vulnerable to an extinction. There are 20 different types of penguin. Did you know that? How many of them can you name? I'll give you 2 of them for free. The first one is an emperor penguin. That's the tallest. They can be like 4 feet tall. The next one I'll give you is the smallest penguin. It's only about a foot tall. It's called a little blue penguin. It's just like 13 inches small, tiny. You and your child can look at penguins, learn about penguins, and think about maybe other flightless birds as well. You can go down the route of science. So what makes a bird a bird? They all have wings, right? But they don't all fly. Some of them can swim, they can't. Can they differentiate between the different qualities and attributes that different types of birds have? You could get creative and they could design their own bird. What things would it need in order to be classified as a bird? But maybe combine different features of different types of birds. That could be like a science project, or you can make it arts and craftsy with getting some feathers and some paints and designing the patterns and the textures of it as well. What else could we do about birds? Well, I'm looking at the daily discovery cards here, which is my inspiration. And it says, what do flightless birds use their wings for instead of flying? How else do they differ from birds that can fly? If they can't fly, what makes them birds? And then we could get philosophical as well, thinking about a huddle of penguins all huddling together. What would that feel like? Why do they huddle? How do they know how to huddle? What can we learn from their strong sense of community and teamwork? It's quite a good question. And how do you think they communicate with each other? And how do they communicate when they're underwater? Looking at animal language and animal communication is always so fascinating. And there's lots of opportunities there for you and your child to think about that, to talk about that. So that's Penguin Day. January 21st, here we have a festival. It's Dia de la Altagracia, which is a holiday from the Dominican Republic. And the story of this dates back to 1502, when there was a painting of the Virgin Mary that was taken to the Dominican Republic. And people believed that it was magic, it had magical powers, it had like religious powers, right? And so the people there built a basilica to keep the painting in, to preserve it in. And it's called the Basilica Cathedral Nuestra Señora de la Altagracia. And so every year, thousands of Catholics go on a pilgrimage to this place, to this site, to this basilica, to see this painting. And they pay homage to Our Lady of Altagracia, which is what they call her. And they walk for miles with candles as offerings, as a sign of devotion and as a sign of their faith. And I guess we can ask questions about what's the furthest you've ever walked? What are the reasons why we generally walk, or why humans make journeys and think about pilgrimages and how they feature in different religions and the purpose behind those? There's some maths as well in terms of like steps and step counts and linking it to some exercise as well. But then a great design task from the Daily Discovery cards is create your own miniature basilica. So you can have a go at creating this. I mean, you see the cards, you'll understand it's a stunning, beautiful building, the basilica. And your child can be inspired by that image and have a go at creating their own, whether it's more traditional or a more modern take. You can look at architecture of other religious buildings or focus just on Catholic buildings and have a go at building with a large dome and with towers and any artwork as well related to basilicas, and using a range of different media, glitter and paints and crayons and things. Also, I think this inspires story writing as well, or poetry, thinking about people going on this pilgrimage, going on this journey. Also the story of a magic painting, I mean, that is pretty awesome, and your child, and you can take that in any direction you wish. I'd always say shared writing is the best way to go about writing. What I mean by that is you and your child writing something together. So between you, you're producing one piece of work. You can model getting your child's ideas and putting them into formal sentences, getting their creative writing going. They'll have all the ideas needed. You won't need to help them with that. You can just focus on the boring bit of putting it into grammatical structured sentences. But doing that together is a wonderful, fun thing, and it also models to your child all those dry things that are hard to pick up on, like capital letters and punctuation. And you're just kind of harnessing their power, harnessing their creativity, and putting it into something that you're creating together that you can be proud of, that you can then share, or you could go on a pilgrimage to deliver it to somebody, or go on a pilgrimage to put it in a safe place, donate it to the local library. So that is January 21st. Up next we have January 22nd, which is the Day of Unity in Ukraine, a celebration of the day when the east of Ukraine and the west of Ukraine united to form one country, which is in the year 1919, so over 100 years ago. And it holds a great significance for the people of Ukraine this day, as it really symbolizes them coming together as one people. And in the year 1990, as an act of celebration, people they held hands to form a human chain, right? 300,000 people linked arms on this day to create a human chain that stretched 450 kilometers. I mean, that's mind-blowing. So that was from the capital city of Kiev all the way to the city of Lviv. So 450 kilometers of people linking hands. There's loads of maths there about like measuring your arm span and how many people it would take to reach a certain distance if you're linking arms, getting all the way around the planet, getting to the moon and back, doing some of those calculations. That would be quite interesting. If the whole world linked hands, how far do you think we'd stretch? So some maths questions that's unattainable. You know, maths doesn't always need to be black and white, get the answer right or wrong. Maths can be about estimation and prediction and having getting creative with it. That I've always found is the best way for children to get confident with their maths, is to explore those grey areas in maths. So yeah, we can do some measuring here, measuring your steps, count up how many steps it takes you to get to a certain place. What's the distance from your bedroom to the kitchen, or from your front door to a certain tree. Make some estimates first, then have a go at measuring it in steps, then have a go at measuring it in feet or in meters, looking at the other ways that we can take measurements of length and measurements of distance. The philosophical questions here are nice as well. What does unity mean to you? The question here you could ask your child is, when have you been united with another person or another group of people, and how does it feel? Get them thinking about what communities they're a part of, what families of people they're a part of, and how it makes them feel, who they're connected to and how. So that's January 22nd. January 23rd is inspired by this little guy. It's Mozart Day. January 23rd is his birthday. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, born on this day in 1756. A child prodigy who started writing music when he was only 5 years old and learned to compose symphonies using entire orchestras. He could play many instruments fluently, including piano, violin, and harpsichord. In his short life, he composed 600 works. I mean, just considering 600 different pieces of music composed by one person is mind-blowing, right? How many minutes is that? How many hours is that? From symphonies and concertos to operas and chamber music, his compositions are known for their beauty, complexity, and emotional depth. Well, what can we do? We can compose our own symphonies. Why not start by getting your child to plan out a simple little melody that you can then record onto a device, onto a phone, using an earbud as a microphone like I am, or it could just be like a repetitive rhythm that they're tapping out, using anything, using cuddly toys or books or slamming cupboard doors or bashing cushions, and then have a go at maybe using their voice to create some different sounds as well. And then putting those together, you could go down the route of technology if you want and find some software where you can overlap those different sounds and create kind of loops of, repetitive loops, and see what music you can make that way. Let your child play around with the tech side of things, or go more performing arts side of things and have your child, prepare a composition that they can then perform to an audience on Mozart Day, Mozart Week even. It's Mozart Week all week. And you can have conversations with your child about different types of musical instrument that are out there. String instruments, what type of string instruments are there? Brass instruments, how do they work? What about percussion? What are the different ways that different people from around the world make music differently, different instruments? I think that would be really interesting to explore different instruments from around the world. That could be a whole project, or it could just be for today. How does music make you feel? Do different instruments make you feel differently? Which is a lovely conversation to have with your child. Explore listening to different music and thinking about what it makes you think of, what it makes you visualize, how it makes you feel. Show your child the power of music and the impact of music on their mood, on their thoughts. That is something I'm definitely going to do on January 23rd. Don't forget it, Mozart Day. Okay, January 24th, we have a festival from the Philippines. It's called the Abel Festival. Abel means weaving, so it's a festival of weaving. And so this festival is all about showcasing the incredible talents of Filipino communities in terms of weaving and being able to make things by interlocking and lacing together different fabrics, which has been an integral part of Filipino culture for centuries, right? And the highlight of it is displays of these textiles, and each region in the Philippines have slightly different techniques for making different things, slightly different designs and patterns. And so, your children will be fascinated to look at these amazing products from around the country of the Philippines and how they vary. And your child can have a go at weaving. That's the activity. Let's have a go at making our own piece of artwork using some colourful yarns or ribbons. You cut them to the same length and then have a go at, gluing them side by side onto a wooden stick and interlacing them. I mean, children instinctively will be able to play around with this, and then it's a great exploration if you and them, rather than necessarily going straight to a YouTube tutorial and learning how to do it, is have a play around first. See what you can kind of discover and reinvent yourself before then maybe looking at some examples and copying them and learning from those. I'd always say, jump in with your child and have a play around and see what you can discover. But then absolutely learn from some pros, have a look at the Abel Festival and what you can learn from there. But have a go first playing around with some ribbons. You could go natural materials, see what you can gather. Can you weave with sticks or with dried leaves or straw? Or what else can you get in your local vicinity? Recycling maybe? You can then turn into like a basket or a piece of artwork. And the questions here are thinking about what things around you have been made by hand and what things have been made by machine, and getting children to begin to see that products have been produced in a certain way, whether that's manufactured by hand, whether it's furniture, or whether they've been made in a factory by machines, printed on books. Even just thinking about a book, like what processes have gone into that to take pulp or wood to then turn it into white paper and the ink. How has that ink been produced, and what process has that gone into to become words or images on a piece of paper, or even devices? What's the process that a device like a tablet is created? Considering those processes and going into it as an adult, as a parent, and saying, I don't know. I just had to kind of make up about the book. I don't really know. I talked about pulp, but what is pulp? I mean, is it old recycled? Is it trees? And then they get mushed together, and is there bleach added to whiten it? And then with inks, I don't even know the process of how inks are created and what goes into those. And being vulnerable and showing that ignorance to your child is so valuable. Showing them that adults aren't just these knowledgeable beings that just have endless and infinite awareness. Going into it saying I don't know, but I'm quite interested now. Modeling that curiosity, modeling that ignorance, and wanting to go on a learning journey is so powerful. And doing that with your child is amazing. When I do that with my daughter, with Afra, she's great at making stuff up. And she'll say things like, I know how ink's made. Yeah, there's like a certain worm in the Amazon rainforest, and you squeeze it and ink comes out. So she goes in with a hypothesis, like a fantastic fictional 6-year-old's perspective of the world, of how things are created. And then when we do learn, she's like, oh yeah, no, maybe it is that instead. Yeah, maybe it wasn't the worm thing. But she goes into it from a place of creativity. And it'll be interesting for you to see, what does your child go into it from? Are they uncomfortable with not knowing, like Afra? Or are they able to say, yeah, I don't know either, let's find out? Yeah, ask those questions and find out. The philosophical question here is there any point in learning a traditional skill or craft that a machine could do more easily? Which is a big question, right? Is there any point in learning how to weave when a machine can just make it for you? What's the purpose of it? I like that question. Ask your child on January 24th, see what they think. January 25th is Burns Supper. Robert Burns, the famous Scottish poet, is celebrated today on his birthday, January 25th. He's famous for lots of poems, including one which was, I think he wrote Auld Lang Syne as well, that we sing on New Year's Eve. He wrote a poem called To a Haggis, addressed to a haggis. Now, haggis, if you don't know, is a very traditional Scottish dish, which is cooked inside a sheep's, cooked inside their lung, I think? I don't know. But inside it is like all the offal, so it's like minced up sheep's heart and liver and lungs mixed with like onion and oatmeal and spices. And it's cooked inside. That's what this picture is of. And so like you cut it open and it's all in there. I mean, I'm vegetarian, so it's not my bag, but I appreciate it's a part of the Scottish heritage and their cultural identity. And today's a great time to be inspired by Robert Burns and have a go at writing our own poetry. Rather than writing a poem to a haggis, though, what food would your child write to what food would they like to write a poem to? A poem for a pizza, or an ode to an orange. You could do plenty more of those. A riddle for a radish. You could do a whole collection. Your child could write to their favourite food, telling them, how much they love them, or to something they hate or are disgusted by. Something like haggis. My poem to a haggis will be very different to Robert Burns's. And we can look at food as well. That's always a good topic of conversation. What parts of an animal do you eat if you are a meat eater? Would you eat the heart and the lungs and the liver? If not, why not? Is it okay to eat some parts and not parts? Why do we eat sheep or chicken and lamb? That's okay. But where you're from, maybe it's not acceptable or considered right to eat a horse or a dog. What's the difference there? Conversations like this that are grey areas are brilliant learning opportunities. So do not shy away from them. Go for them. And think about what food traditions you have, whether they're religious or just cultural, societal, or just within your family. Are there certain foods you eat at certain times? Do you only have popcorn at the cinema? Do you only have hot chocolate when it's cold? You could try and find what foods are matched up in certain specifics and talk about those, which is good fun. And the last one we've got for today, for this week, is January 26th, Australia Day. A chance here to look at some Aboriginal artwork. Interestingly, though, Australia Day is celebrated on the day when the island of Australia was discovered by the First Fleet in 1788, when it was Captain Arthur Phillip arrived at Sydney Harbour, I don't think it was a harbour at the time, and raised the British flag. Now the celebration is more about celebrating those peoples that were already there, who history tried to erase and forget about, but celebrating the Aboriginal peoples of Australia. And this in particular, on the Daily Discovery cards, looks at some artwork that Aboriginal people are famous for, which is the dot paintings, where they create their own inks and then they do like finger painting, dot patterns. They don't just have to be patterns though, they paint animals and landscapes. And this is talking about how you can have a go at this art yourself. You can grab some paintbrushes, paints, a canvas or paper. Also, you could paint onto stuff, right? Painting doesn't always have to be 2D. I always think you can grab some recycling, some boxes, some old books you don't want anymore, some cabinets, some old toys. Find some stuff that is looking a bit bland and do some Aboriginal dot painting on it. This also opens up questions about invasions and people settling in other parts of the world, thinking about what drives people to invade a country or an area. Is it ever right to invade somewhere? And think about settlement. Is it okay for people to settle in your country? Is there a limit on how many should be accepted? Are all people welcome? Or is there criteria they should follow? When they get here, should they adopt the customs that are present in this country, or should they bring their own? Loads of questions about migration, immigration. That's going to be fascinating for you and your child to explore. And one thing I'll say is, your child's, what would feel like political views or human views are still forming, right? So they're going to have viewpoints that might not be aligned with yours. And for now, that's okay, right? I mean, it may be as an adult that you disagree on certain things, and that's something that you'll need to navigate. But as a child, their views don't matter, okay? They can't vote politically, and they're still developing. So it would make sense that they would have viewpoints that you would see as being undeveloped, or coming from a place of ignorance, because they're a child, right? They're undeveloped and they're ignorant about lots of things in the world. So if they're expressing a view that to you feels very inhumane, it's very difficult to not shame that view out of them, and to make them feel kind of that they've made the wrong decision, but to accept what views they're expressing. And for you to express your view and the evidence or the belief behind it or the reasons behind it, so you can model your belief. If they were to say things like that are sharply contrasting about immigration, you maybe think that immigration has a net positive on the environment. Whereas your child might say, oh, no one should be allowed to leave the country, even if it's war-torn. And you go, oh, that's jarring, I completely disagree with that. Be open and ask them to say, oh, interesting, how come you think that? Why? What makes you think that? What about if there was a storm in that country and they needed to escape from it? Would that be okay? Discuss those grey areas and say, well, from my point of view, I think if it was me in that country and I wanted to find somewhere else to go, I'd hope to find a country that would be welcoming. So you're just calmly communicating your views and not needing to convert your child. Whether those views are religious or political or more humanistic, I think a calm and open discursive environment will allow your child to develop their own well-formed views rather than just kind of take on your own views in a hollow and kind of more parroting fashion. But hey, that's going to open up a load of conversations for you guys on January 26th. So that is the week, the world this week, and loads of opportunities for you and your child to do some great learning together. Don't forget, you can check out the daily discovery cards which I've made. You can download those yourself. They're available to buy. That can inspire you conversations and learning with your child. But yeah, hopefully that's helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe. There'll be more content next week when I tell you what's coming up in the world next week. But in the meantime, have an amazing week, guys, and see how many of those penguins you can think of. Okay, bye.